Why we believe 8, the fulfilment of prophecy. Speaking of the Old Testament, Jesus said, "These are the very scriptures that testify about me, yet you refuse to come to me to have life." John 5. I wonder if you've ever played darts. Most of us only ever get the bullseye as a fluke. But would you say it was a fluke if it happened every single time? No, hitting it every time, that's evidence of the most awesome, the most skillful player. Well, a prophecy is a message from God, often predicting some future event. But there are over 300 in the Old Testament that predict things in Jesus' life, and they hit home absolutely every time. Now, some are very clear indeed. Predictions of where he would be born, or the nature of his birth, the area Jesus would live, the miracles he would perform, the manner of his death, the details of his death, the details of his burial, and of course, his resurrection. Now look, scholars accept that what we have in our Bibles was written before Jesus lived. So what do we make of that? Well, some might say that the gospel writers simply created the story of Jesus to fit the prophecies. Well, look, we covered that in our previous reflections. The gospel writers had no reason to, and people could have pointed out if they had. Others might say that Jesus himself purposefully fulfilled the prophecies. Well, the problem here is that every one of the 8 I've just mentioned were beyond his control. Still others might say that Jesus fulfilled the prophecies by coincidence. Well, 1 or 2 possibly, but 8 or 300? It brings us to do some maths. So a maths professor called Peter Stoner has worked out the probability of any man fulfilling just 8 prophecies. He says the chances are 1 in 10 to the power of 17. That means a number so huge as to make it unlikely to the point of being utterly impossible. If you add in the many more prophecies involved and the way the Old Testament looks to Jesus in other ways, it's the pattern of its events and things like that, then look, the likelihood of Jesus fulfilling the Jewish scriptures is so infinitesimally small as to be beyond all belief, except for God's hand lying behind all history, God's hand governing it so that they would be fulfilled. In our verse, Jesus said the Old Testament scriptures testify about him. So you can think of the prophecies like pieces of a puzzle personally designed by God to paint a picture of Jesus' life so that we would recognize him when he comes. More than that, as Jesus said, he said, they testify about him so that we might come to him for the life he gives. That's why he and the apostles made so much of the prophecies. And their miraculous fulfillment is just another reason why we can so confidently believe in the God of the Bible.